everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our event here, our third and final one for the year, and also give thanks to our musician here who played us some wonderful music while you ate. This year's theme was A Mighty Walk, and we also are commemorating the 150th anniversary for the Emancipation Proclamation and the 50th anniversary for the March on Washington. Two very big events for the African American community and for everyone else as well. And we're also looking at the current challenges that we still face today, because there are still many barriers between our worlds.
Thank you to Dee Marie, and thank you all for being here today in celebration of African American History Month, started by a man by the name of Carter G. Woodson, who reminds us that those of us who fail to remember our history may be doomed to repeat it. So there are certain aspects of our history that we do want to celebrate having left behind. There are others that we want to commemorate and join in together in celebrating, because so many in the African American community and in all our communities have done such great work together. We cannot help but stand here today remembering that work as it lays the groundwork and the platform for our continuing struggle together to move forward. So thank you for being here. I want to note that we have a lot of good things happening within the next hour. We're going to be starting and revving up. But first, I'd like us to take just a moment of silence to acknowledge that one has fallen among us who has stood in the gap on behalf of citizens of St. Paul as a police officer, that there are some missing here today who would otherwise be with us were it not for the fact that they were commemorating that work and that life of Josh Lino. His funeral celebration has been today and is continuing between St. Paul and Stillwater. So if we could just take a moment of silence to honor his life, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Now I'd like to bring forward, on behalf of the mayor and the city of St. Paul, our deputy mayor to give greetings. Deputy Mayor Paul Williams.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you for the moment of silence. I actually just came back from the funeral service, and it was very, very touching, and it makes me reflect on Black History Month is about commitment and service, sacrifice, and to see an officer, a young officer, age 29, I think 16 some commendations, 2 life-saving commendations in a short 5 years with the force, died in the line of duty, just reminds me of the amount of commitment, service, sacrifice that we celebrate throughout Black History Month, but that many of you all in your work with the county, with the city, and in public service demonstrate day in, day out, and unrecognized sometimes, but it's powerful. And so I thank you for your service, for your commitment, for your sacrifice on behalf of the citizens of St. Paul. And I welcome you here on behalf of the mayor, who was supposed to be out, actually was out in Washington, D.C. last night, honoring, of all people, George Latimer. Got back on a plane at 6 a.m. this morning in order to be back in time for the funeral service, and now is actually getting back on a plane to get to Salt Lake City for a visit around transit issues. So he sends his warm greetings, and for those of you who had a chance to hear his remarks last week, which I thought were just very touching and very, very powerful. He really values the learning, the remembrance of history, and is a student of history himself, actually, last week, if you heard his remarks. So welcome all of you, and I want to say thank you to the planning committee that puts this on every year, and this year that has put that on. Want to say thank you to the county for their partnership, and particularly Commissioner Carter for her partnership on just a range of issues that we work together on. So welcome and thanks, and look forward to hearing our speaker today.
The theme of today's program is a mighty walk, and we are going to begin our walk with a song. How appropriate that this would be so, as so much of the movement for civil rights was led through song. We have with us today Ashley DeBose, and Ashley is a blooming Twin Cities artist, singer, songwriter. She has been gaining local, national, and even international acclaim and attention. Over just these past few months since the release of her debut album called Something More.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling seas. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers died. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughter. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shall be thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashley, for leading us in that song. Sometimes called the Black National Anthem, the song truly does speak to the struggle that African American people here have come through and to the ownership of this land and working together in this land toward peace and justice, freedom, equality, and equity for all. So I just want to thank you all. It's difficult to hear that song without singing along. So I appreciate your beautiful voice and your welcoming all of us to sing along with you. Thank you so very, very much. And now we have 3 proclamations which are being delivered in honor of this celebration. The first will be delivered on behalf of the City Council by our Council President, Kathy Lantry. Kathy, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, Tony. You know, it's interesting. Tony said it's hard not to sing along with that song, and she's absolutely right, except that if you stand anywhere close to Tony Carter, you think our young lady could sing. You should hear Tony. No, and I have to say, it's like I totally want to belt it out, and then it's like I can't sing a bit. I can't. So no. So, but what and as Tony mentioned, we just got back from the funeral of Officer Lino at the cathedral, where the music again was absolutely spectacular. And again, as a way to praise and honor him, I really have to hold back because I realized there were people sitting in front of me, so I was singing on the inside where it counts. I don't often get a chance to sit down and watch cable at home. I tend to be, at meetings and whatnot, as I know so many people are. But this week I happened to be flipping through the channels, and I came across, I don't know if it was last week's or the first week's events where there were a bunch of kids doing skits. Oh my gosh, I was riveted. And they were so terrific, and it reminded me that someone does all of this wonderful planning, has wonderful guest speakers who want to make us come and listen, and then broadcast it for those who can't join us. So I think to the committee, you've just done a marvelous job, and it's every year that you get more and more interesting people. I'm amazed by the network and the dedication that so many people have. So certainly on behalf of my colleagues on the St. Paul City Council, I want to say thank you to everyone who organizes this every year. And for those of us who rushed from the 3rd floor down, about 2 you could start smelling the food, and it was like, it's like I always think, which side of the courthouse is this on? And so I just followed my nose. So anyway. So congratulations too to you guys who got food. So I am honored to be able to read a proclamation from the St. Paul City Council recognizing Black History Month 2013. Whereas Black History Month, as we know it today, started its month-long observance in 1976 to celebrate the African American people and to highlight the role African Americans have played in the development of medicine, politics, government, community leadership, science, business, religion, education, literature, theater, music, arts, sport, and many other areas of civic and natural culture. Whereas during this month, we recognize the courage and tenacity of many hardworking Americans whose legacies are woven into the history and fabric of our city and our nation, and honor the extraordinary achievements of African Americans and their essential role in shaping our community. Whereas during this year's observance of Black History Month, the City of St. Paul and Ramsey County will recognize those who have shared a mighty walk for emancipation and civil rights and continue to take on the challenges of today. Whereas by sharing the stories of these community leaders, we better understand the contributions of other extraordinary men and women who have given their collective efforts, energy, and spirit to creating new horizons so all can discover them and take them further on. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the St. Paul City Council recognizes February 2013 as Black History Month, a mighty walk, emancipation, civil rights, and current challenges. Be it further resolved that the City Council encourages all residents to join in recognizing the contributions and achievements of the extraordinary individuals whose work towards emancipation and civil rights will encourage future generations in St. Paul. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a second proclamation, which will be read on behalf of Ramsey County. I am a member of the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners. Our chair, Rafael Ortega, is not with us today. He had planned to be visiting with us, but was called out for another occasion. And since I was going to be here, I agreed to read the proclamation on his behalf and on behalf of our county manager, Julie Kleinschmidt, and the entire Ramsey County Board. And the proclamation reads, whereas African American History Month was founded to celebrate the achievements of African Americans in the United States, we at Ramsey County celebrate African American History Month not just this month, but throughout the year. And whereas A Mighty Walk is the theme chosen by the Ramsey County City of St. Paul African American History Month Program Committee, a theme inspired by the words of Martin Luther King Jr. from his speech at the time of the 1965 Civil Rights March from Selma to Montgomery. And whereas A Mighty Walk captures the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, which led to the end of slavery and to 70 men from Ramsey County of a Minnesota black population of just 259 in 1860, enlisting for Civil War service in the Union Army. And whereas the Mighty Walk also reflects the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where 250,000 people of all races peacefully marched to the Lincoln Memorial, including local civil rights pioneers Roy Wilkins, Whitney Young, and Anna Arnold Hedgeman, who helped organize the event, and our own Matthew Little and Josie Johnson from Minnesota. And whereas in 2012, we passed another milestone on this walk when this nation re-elected President Barack Obama with a true rainbow coalition. We celebrate how far we as a nation and a state have walked. But we also acknowledge how far we have to go before we reach complete and true liberation, complete equality and equity, complete opportunity, and complete respect for everyone. And so we will continue to work toward that. Now, therefore be it proclaimed by the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners that the month of February is African American History Month in Ramsey County. And be it further proclaimed, the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners urges all Ramsey County employees and citizens to celebrate the history, inspiration, and influence of African American people. And I will give this to Kathy Henderson for the Black History Month Committee.
Well, it's difficult to be the third in three proclamations, especially when read by Commissioner Carter. I do want to just take a moment again to recognize kind of the significance of the month and the opportunity to kind of learn and dialogue with one another over the course of this month. I think it's just it's a great series. So I'm going to take my glasses off actually to read, and I want to say on behalf of Mayor Chris Coleman, whereas on February 11th, 1986, the United States Congress passed Public Law 99-244, designating February of 1986 as National Black History Month, and in 1976, this observance evolved into a month-long celebration. And whereas on February 28th, 1996, Senate Resolution 229 was issued commemorating Black History Month, and on February 16th, 2006, Senate Resolution 380 was issued celebrating Black History Month, and whereas Black History Month offers an opportunity for all Americans to honor and reflect on all the accomplishments and contributions to our nation that African Americans have achieved, especially in fighting to overcome the injustice and disparity that African Americans faced for decades in order to attain social and political equality while participating in the civil rights movement. And whereas Black History Month encourages unity of all Americans and promotes our ideals of social and legal justice, equal education, political and economic equal opportunities, and freedom for all members of our community. Now, therefore, I, Christopher B. Coleman, Mayor of the City of St. Paul, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2013 to be Black History Month in the City of St. Paul.
I want to introduce Professor Mahmoud El-Kati. Dr. Mahmoud El-Kati is a professor at Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota, where he teaches courses on the history of blacks in the United States, American social movements, sports, and the African American community, the social history of jazz, and Afro-American folklore. Dr. Kati has written many articles, essays, and reviews which have appeared in the New York Times, St. Paul Pioneer Press, the Star and Tribune, Insight News, the Spokesman, and the Nigerian Times. He is co-founder and director of the annual Pan-African Conference at Mankato State University, and he is actively involved in community organizations such as March, a Twin Cities group that formed following the Million Man March, and the Minneapolis-based Stair Step Foundation and KMOJ. He is also the recipient of the National Association of Black Storytellers Zora Neale Hurston Award, and he has recently received a Sankofa Award from the Stair Step Foundation for his longtime and unwavering commitment and work with the Twin Cities African American community. Dr. El-Kati also teaches at Metro State University and at Minneapolis North High School, an assignment which he dearly loves. I have to share that about a week ago today, I had the pleasure of attending a dinner celebrating and in tribute to Dr. Mahmoud El-Kati, held at Macalester in honor of his work. He was celebrated there by generations of people in this Twin Cities community who call him Teacher Kadi. So please welcome with me, with a big round of applause, Dr. Kadi Mahmoud El-Kati, teacher.
Hello, everybody. How you doing? Thank you, Tony Carter, for that overly generous introduction. I really am uneasy about introductions because one can never live up to them. Especially, sometimes the introduction is better than the speech. I think it happens too often. It's happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to you, where the speaker was downhill after the introduction. Yeah. But I want to thank you and let you know that I'm very pleased to be here. I've spoken to this audience before. Pleased not in the sense of being happy, but pleased at the opportunity to make a connection, to perhaps interact, hoping that I say something that makes sense to at least some of you. I've been doing this all of my conscious life, which is, when was I conscious? At maybe 18, 17, I don't know. You can exist without consciousness, you know that. I want to, with the little time I have, say a few things about a few things. And that is, this is the 87th observance of African American history. That's very important for everybody to understand, because this has been going on for 87 years. Founded in 1926 by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who was the third African American to earn a PhD from Harvard, as they say. Very brilliant man who spoke several languages, and he studied African people in 4 of the 6 continents of the world, digging up the facts about even in China, not just in Africa, in Central and South America, even in Asia, even in India. That's the committed life that Dr. King talked about. He lived a committed life for 75 years. When he was born 10 years after slavery, about 4 people in his village could read. He was part of the first generation of Black American people to have mass education, to learn how to read, because during slavery, for the most part, reading for Black people was an illegal, unlawful entity. You could be punished if you were white teaching Frederick Douglass to read. So you need to put that in context. And I know that things on people's mind are always about the current reality of things, and we want to deal with it now. But I want to emphasize this point, and that is this. History is not merely or even principally about the past. It is about the present and all that we do. It isn't something that's written in a book. No. History lives within you. Carter G. Woodson said, this great man, when you give a man a history, you give him a personality, and when you give him a personality, you extend to him humanity. And if you recognize your humanity, that means you also recognize mine, and that means that there's a limit to what you can do to me and keep a clear conscience if you see me as a part of history. History is simply another word for humanity. No history, no humanity. That's what happened to the native people of this land. Savagery is an anti-historical statement. Heathen for black people is anti-historical. So if you don't have history, you're not a fully fleshed human being. If you don't have culture, you cannot be considered a human being. Of course, there are no human beings without history and culture. That's the work of politics and oppression. There are no human beings who are born on this earth who do not have a history and experience through time and space. It may not be your history or my history, but everybody has a history. Everybody has a culture. Culture is a way of life. Culture is a human invention. Culture is what people make or do or think or feel or know. That's what it is. It teaches us that there's no one way to be a human being. There's a Navajo way to be a human being. There's an Ojibwe way of being a human being. There's a German way. There's a English way. There's a French way of being a human being. When you say white, you're not really talking about culture. There's no culture like that. We're trapped in this racist environment while we say black history and so forth. If I were still in Africa, I would be in Ashanti, or Hausa, or Yoruba, or Mandinka, like Alice Haley's people. That's what you would see, not through racial eyes, but through history and culture. I want to make this crystal clear. And I'm in a distinct minority. There is no such thing as race in a biological sense. It does not exist except politically, socially, economically, and that's created by people. No geneticist would acknowledge that you can predict my makeup by my genetic codes, because each one of us are made up of over 100,000 genes. Can you deal with that? We don't even know what genes are. You know. So the texture of my hair don't tell you how I think and what I think. The shape of my nose can't tell you who I am. Who-ness comes from culture. Who-ness, what I look like is one thing. What I think like is another. What I know is another. What I understand is another. It has nothing to do with the biological makeup of my existence. Now, that's kind of scary to me, because Americans are very smart people, in a way. They're complex people. I think they're among the smartest / dumbest people on the planet. I mean, it's both. This is why you believe in race. As smart as we are in the practical sense, you know, in the material world, this stuff, spiritual life, and so we don't have much interest in it. Completely outward oriented, or taught to be. I know that everybody's not outward oriented, but I'm saying completely. So I want to say that first, that black history is a part of the history of humanity. It's just we live in this kind of society in which, unfortunately, the founding fathers, great as they were, made a mistake, and they do it. When they injected race as a major principle of organizing the United States of America. They know that. You know what I'm saying? Jefferson. I believe that slavery is an exercise of the most boisterous passions, of unremitting despotism on the one hand and degrading submissions on the other. It teaches white children to be tyrants after the pattern of their parents. It destroys the will to work in white men. And above all, it robs man of God's greatest gift, and that is the gift of liberty. Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever. He was presaging the Civil War way back then. That's it's not going to work. You got a government where part of the people are free and the other part are enslaved. Hey, you don't see that? This is the land of the free. And in the boys' world, the home of the slave. There's two things. This is the house of refuge for people from afar. From Europe. This is a house of bondage for black people. For most of their existence, for 10 generations. They lived in captivity. Within a democracy. You know what that is? That's a violent contradiction. That's what we live out of now. That's why we can't understand one another. That's why you don't have an educational system capable of educating a multicultural population. It has no frame of reference for that because of what? The doctrine of white supremacy. That's what it is. That's an ideology. That's a system of ideas and values and beliefs which people are indoctrinated into that. Whether you're black, white, Native American, there's one ideology over us. And that ideology says that there's only one way to be a human being. And that's nonsense. Okay. Utter nonsense. That's what I mean. There's no one way to be a human being. Anybody who had a course in anthropology knows that. There's no more than one way to be human, to feel kinship, to have empathy. We have 11 basic needs, 4 basic wishes. There's no one way to do that anymore. There's no one language. There's no one religion. There's no one value system. There's no one custom, one habit, one mores. What are we talking about? We don't know. Because we live under an ideology which trains people to say, in effect, if you're not white, you're not real. We've got to deal with that. We cannot allow another generation of children to grow up like that. Ralph Ellison, great black writer, wrote one of the great books in 20th century America. It's called Invisible Man. Anybody ever heard of it? No. But it's one of the 100 greatest works of fiction. Read it. He begins that book by saying, I am an invisible man. No, I'm not one of your Hollywood ectoplasms. Nor am I one of the spooks out of the stories of Edgar Allan Poe. I am a man of substance, of fiber, of liquid, of bone. And it might even be said that I possess a mind. But I'm invisible, you understand, simply because people refuse to see me. That's a major theme in black literature, is invisibility. Nobody knows my name, even if I'm here. The eternal outsider. This is what we got to avoid with the coming generations of children. Children don't come in the world with prejudices. Nobody knows if they're white or black in the sense that we train people into that. I didn't know that I was a Negro until I did not know. But the society said that I was. And no white child knows that they are white in some special way until they're trained into that. Hate, like love, must be taught. So you don't come in the world with any value system. I don't come into the world placing any particular value on fair skin. It comes from either being taught by an ideology or taught by life experience of how people treat you, how they greet you, how they feel you. Everything is not communicated by words. You can feel how people feel about you. That's important. So Black History Month, if nothing else, can wake people up to get in touch with their humanity, which means they're in touch with other human beings. And humanity simply means you have empathy for somebody besides you. That's what it means to be human. And this bright country with all these great minds, the scientists and all of that, have got to get rid of this myth. Now, I accept race as a myth. A myth is something that people believe in, whether it's true or not. It's a little bit of truth and a lot of other stuff. Every society has myths. Human beings are myth-making creatures. Our myth is a myth of race. You know, it's a myth. It's an idea where everything comes from. And it produces something called racism, ISM. That's active. The myth is an idea which thinks all these things about, you know, if I were talking about Nazi Germany, you would full well understand what I'm saying. Isn't that interesting? You know, what Hitler was talking about, what? Race! He's one of the guys who made racism in America unpopular because what he did to other people who were white in Europe, who would be white here, and there were other races there, and he said, because there's one race, there's the Aryan race, and that's the superior race, not white. Aryan! And I'm going to start with something physical. Skin color. Fair skin. The fairest skin. Not just ordinary white, but fairest. I want blue-eyed. I want towhead. And you brown-haired and brown-eyed people, you're in trouble. And that's exactly, not just Jews, people who focus on Jews, gypsies, anybody who's different, gays, lesbians. Yeah, that's what he said, the world is my idea, I'm an Aryan. And even if you think you're white, you're not white enough, you gotta stop this madness. Now what was that? What created Nazi Germany? I know this, you don't want this stuff, but I'm saying, you know, the principle, the organizing principle was race. He took all these myths out of the background of the writings of Nietzsche and whomever, the philosophers who talked about that, and put it together. Here's this guy. You know, this, you question whether he was Austrian. He wasn't even German. Right? And here he is, captured that myth in the background, put it together before people. And when he was in jail, what he said, and it's true of America, the most important thing that human beings have is the word. You know, and the thing that I want most is to have command and power over the magic of the spoken word. And that's what he did with the spoken word. A guy who looked nothing like the people he said, tall, blonde. That's what the word can do. It can create things that don't even exist. That's what language is. I like the Native American definition. I forgot which nation said, language is life. Can imagine you can create things that don't even exist with language. And race belongs to that category. You cannot prove that people belong to races. No human being can prove that they are white. No human being with any sense would dare try to prove that. You know, and people don't think, you know, it has to be challenged. You know, I'm still talking about black history. Oh, yeah. We had a saying in the 60s, everything is what? Everything. Everything in this world has a place, and yet everything is related to everything. Yes, I'm still talking about black history because it's a part of human history. And I'm talking about white people. I don't want to isolate black people over here as if they're not in the world of affairs. That's racism causes that. Racism causes you to see me as a stranger. Racism, you know, that ideology of race, well, I'm not a stranger. My ancestors have been here for 14 generations, since Jamestown. Before most white people knew America was in the world, black people were building it. Your country, I would say to the what are these people, the people, I don't want my country back, what do they call? The Tea Party, yeah. Du Bois had a response to those kind of people. Your country? How came it yours? Before the Pilgrims landed, we were here. Before the pen of Thomas Jefferson etched the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence across the pages of history, we were here. It is here that we brought our three great gifts and mingled them with yours. The gift of story, of song, of soft stirring melody in an ill-harmonized and unmelodious land. The gift of sweat and brawn to beat back the wilderness, to fell the forest, and lay the foundation to this vast economic empire 200 years before your weak hands could have done it. And the third gift, the greatest, is the gift of spirit. That's black people's genius, spirit. Would America be America without our Negro people? That's a rhetorical question. Of course not. Of course not. There's no America without. I'm talking about the republic now. I'm not talking about the land which belonged to the indigenous population. There's no Indian. There were 600 different people ways to be an Indian, what you call an Indian. There were Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Ojibwe over here, Pocahontas' people and Powhatans. They had a name. They weren't Indians. They spoke a language, Powhatan, you know. And then you get a myth with her saving this guy to marry him and so forth. That's mythical. That's mythical history. You know, and myth is a part of history. You know, so we got to stop this foolishness, folks. We can't allow another generation of children of any color to grow up believing in this madness about they belong to races. There are peoplehoods. There are cultures. And when you say that, I think of language, of customs, of mores, of habits, of beliefs, of the way of shaking hands. You see culture happening all the time, and they call the people culture deprived. I don't believe anybody on the planet who doesn't do the high five now. That's black culture. That's what that is, y'all. Come on. You know, the teacher can't teach that. They don't know. They didn't know when it was giving some skin. They didn't know when it was give me five. They don't know when it's double five. They don't know that it's evolution. You know, that's black. Everybody in this country, culturally speaking, is part black. That's what Jews used to say, and they were right. And back in the 30s with the movies and the Broadway stage and so forth, everybody's part black because everybody talks part black. Everybody talks black. You hear it every day on the television. I just heard the guy, one of the comedians. What's his name? I like him. He's a guy that grows on you. You know, he's acquired. You have to acquire taste for him. David Letterman. I like David Letterman, but listen, I didn't. You know, because he's a corny guy. You know, I thought Midwestern corny guy. You know, but I grew to like his humor. You know, he was saying, you know, last night, you know, my bad. You know, he said, you can't talk American English. I didn't say English without talking black. There are over 200 African words either corrupted or spoken just like Africans. Yam, okra, gumbo. You understand what I'm saying? Tote bag. All this is the African-derived languages. I just met a continental brother out there named Yaya. I grew up with one of my best friend's aunt was named Yaya, and that was her name. It's up and down in the West African languages. Yaya is a common name. Bubba was a corrupt African word. It's booba, his head. There's no Southern boy, black or white, who didn't grow up knowing somebody named Bubba. That's a nickname. You can't grow up without knowing somebody named Bubba. That was Bill Clinton's name. All right, Bill, what? Bubba Clinton. It's African. And we don't know that. So everybody talks black. And everybody dances black. Or tries to, you know. We got to stop this madness. You're a human being. You have a beating heart and living affections. So do I. So do Native Americans. So do gays. So do lesbians. So do people who are on welfare. So do people who are broke. Come on with this stuff. Yeah. There are no perfect human beings. None. There are no superhumans. None. Who's playing with your imagination? all these things about Tarzan and Superman, and you go on playing this stuff, and you know they're all white. You know the saddest thing I think about when I think about Americans is how easy it is, how malleable people's minds are to twist and bleed and so forth. You know, you made the indigenous people foreigners in their own land. That's true. The minute the ink dried on the Constitution, Native Americans were alien because you carved out a geopolitical state called the United States of America. 13 colonies makes up the United States of America. Let me say this lastly, and I know you got to get out of here and get back to that work because you got stuff to do. You know, you're anxious to save the city. You know, but I'll just mention two things. You know, I know you wanted me to talk about, I know what you wanted me to talk about, and I want to mention that. But I want to talk about what I want to talk about. Come here. Two, I mean, I want to talk about that's what needs to be done. We need to get out of this box, this format. But it should be said. Three things are tied together here around Black History Month. Everything is everything. Everything is related to everything. Everything has a place in this world. We're talking about three great documents. There are many historians would claim the three greatest political documents in the modern world comes from America. The first one is, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Everybody in the world knows that. That is the touchstone. It provided the touchstone of American democracy. That's why we all here. That's why we cling to this thing. That's why somebody from any place in the world, that's the American creed. It's not written, but that has appealed to everybody. All men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. You could say, well, Jefferson, was he talking about me? Well, I'm a man, whether he meant it or not, I'm a man. Women, he's talking about me. You know what I mean? Thomas Jefferson was not perfect. And nobody knew that better than he. He halfway blew it. You know, but that's a great idea. Those lofty ideas appeal to all human beings. Flip side. I too sing America. I'm the darker brother. You send me to eat in the kitchen when the company comes. But I laugh, and I eat, and I grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll eat in the kitchen when the company comes. I'll eat at the table when the company comes. And nobody will dare say to me then, eat in the kitchen. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. That's Langston Hughes. That's it. I mean, I was in France last year. French are reading Langston Hughes. The Frenchmen, they love it. He's got high awards from them. An African-American poet, you know, the most widely known African-American poet in the world. It's in 45 different languages. You know, school child can know that, whether you black or white, in the generality. Now, you might run into a sensitive, courageous teacher every night, as I've been lucky enough to meet in 10th grade. But whether the teacher's black or white, that ain't their frame of reference. Langston Hughes is not, you know, like those like Emerson or whomever you want to name. He's a part of America and he's made some of the most brilliant commentaries on what America is. So that's the answer to Jefferson's all men. I too sing America, but you didn't. And then there is a Constitution of the United States, a remarkable document. I mean, changed the world. No question about that. It's a part of the Age of Enlightenment. The Constitution is the oldest written document in the world, the Constitution of the United States. in the world. And this country is about 236 years old. It's a baby compared to England or France, 800, 900 years old. And yet it has the oldest written constitution. Those over 200 nations and the United Nations are patterned after the United States. They're all written. There were constitutions before now America, but they weren't written. Britain has a constitution, but it's not one document. It's a bunch of stuff. Going back to the Magna Carta. That's unique. And in it, it was a part of the Age of Enlightenment. It spun off of the Declaration of Independence. See, that's what, and you have these things in the original Constitution where slaves, black people anyway, were 3/5 of other persons. We were both property and, that never happened before. Property and people at the same time. What are you doing with that? That's politics. And in politics is the art of the possible. You do whatever you can do to gain your end. These were politicians. They were. Like one of these, you think these guys now are dirty. I mean, they were some people did everything. How do you arrive at somebody being a person and a piece of property? As Douglas said himself, I'm seen as a piece of property, a genius. Yes, he was. I claim he was the greatest mind of the 19th century. You can do that. Tom Brokaw don't have to agree with me. I don't have to agree with him or Katie Couric. I say that Frederick Douglass is the greatest mind, democratic mind of the 19th century. Because he was on the right side of human progress, no matter who it affected. Women, he was a champion of the women's rights movement. The most celebrated male, if Lucretia Mott and Harriet Beecher Stowe and all those white women who led them, that were his friends. He was at the first calling of organized women in 1848. He was a main speaker because he was a political feminist. No, people don't know Frederick Douglass. He's the wisest man. Right is of no sex, he said. And truth is of no color on his newspaper. Head of two major movements, and one of the leaders of the two major movements. He was for working class people's rights, even though he was a slave until he was 21. He was in the temperance movement. I mean, he'd be in the anti-drug movement today. He was one of the world's first peace conferences. Anything that stood for human progress, he was in front of it. And Lincoln don't rank with him. I love Lincoln. Don't make no sense. Lincoln is a political genius. No question about that. He's the best writer who ever sat in the presidency. Was Abraham Lincoln. But Douglass was famous before him, although he was 9 years younger. And that is why this is what I'd like for our children to learn. Watch this. When Abraham Lincoln issued his second inaugural, he requested Frederick Douglass's presence. These two men knew one another. Intellectual giants. It's not about color. Douglass said, the mind does not take its complexion from the skin. It got nothing to do with it. They respected one another. And that is why Lincoln wanted him as the second inaugural to hear it. And he came, now he got 1 foot almost in slavery. This is 1865, right? He comes to the White House, and the guys won't let him in. Dutifully, white supremacists doing their stuff, saying, you can't come in here. You say, well, Mr. Lincoln requested him. Now, they knew who Douglass was. He was the most famous Negro in the world, one of the most famous Americans in the world. He lived 2 years in Europe. So they knew who he was. So the guy goes in and comes back and suggests Mr. Lincoln can say, you can come in. So he comes into the place, in the White House. And as he comes into the White House, Mr. Lincoln is engaged after the speech, talking to other people surrounding him. And he saw out of the corner of his eye Frederick Douglass. And he said to these people, excuse me, I'll be right back. He went over to Frederick Douglass, asked him to come to another room. They sat down, and they crossed the table from one another, and Lincoln said, Mr. Douglass, I call you for one reason. What is that? What did you think of the speech? We know what he thinks. They were both wordsmiths. spoken and written. What did you think? And Douglas was one of the most celebrated orators in spite of the fact that he's from this despised group. So he sat down and he said, what did you think of the speech? And he said, Mr. President, it was a sacred moment. Why did he say that? Because Lincoln referred to unrequited labor, living off the sweat of others' brows, talking about black people. Unrequited labor means you didn't get paid for all these years, that you were the basis of the American economy. 75 cents out of every dollar spent came out of the sweat and sinews of black people's body. Yes, it did. It's the one that's what spawned capitalism, was black labor. Labor is the source of all wealth. Let me repeat that again. Labor is the source of all wealth. Machines do it now, but before, the black people are the ones who created the first mass production of cash crops, of tobacco, of cotton. No, it went like this. It went like tobacco and sugar and rice and indigo, and then came cotton, which distorted the economy of the world, so much of it. Everybody in the world was wearing some cotton from South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, picked by black people. Created huge markets and jobs for people all over the world, insurance companies. People made millions. Okay, the last thing you want to know. Most of the people that made the money out of slavery weren't people like Jefferson. They lived in the North, like places like Rhode Island, and the shipbuilding and the textile industry. That's who got the money. So it was a national institution. It's not just Southerners. They control the labor force of black people. But the people in little towns in Rhode Island made tons of money investing in slavery. You need to understand that. And that's why I say America's people are among the smartest / dumbest people, because they don't know anything about America and its complexity. You still think that the country was settled by Gary Cooper or John Wayne, if you're American. It wasn't settled by them. The native people were here when they showed up. Lastly, I think that life is struggle. Struggle is life. And if black people don't struggle, they're not going to be free. Simple as that. I think we're still, relatively speaking, slaves. I mean, it's like reading a 400-page book, and you read 150 pages. You ain't quite there. Because we have made up our minds whether we want to have a free and open society, respectful of the human personality, not of some skin color or crazy stuff like that, or any religion or crazy stuff like that. You got to, because a man is a man, a woman is a woman, and a child is a child. End of discussion. Let a man be a man. Let us see man as man, said Martin Luther King. And he ended one of his talks with these words: we will win the goal of freedom in Birmingham and all over America, because the goal of America is freedom. Scorned and abused though we may be, our destiny is tied to the destiny of America. Before the Pilgrims landed, we were here. Before the pen of Thomas Jefferson etched the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence across the face of history, we were here. For now 3 centuries, our forebears labored without wages. They made cotton king. They built the homes of their masters while suffering gross injustice and shameful humiliation. And yet, out of a bottomless vitality, they continued to thrive and develop. If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery could not stop us, then the opposition we now face will surely fail. Thanks for listening. I know it was hard.
Much appreciation to Mahmoud El-Kati, to all of you, and I must also say to the committee